Hello everybody and welcome back along to the channel. It's that time of the week again, time to have a look at Super Rugby for rounds 11 and 12. Now unfortunately today, unable to secure a guest, so we will be flying solo for this week's episode, but we're having guests back in the future, so don't you worry your little smarty pants about that. We will be getting plenty more people on the show over the rest of the season. But today it's just me going to put up with my rambling for this episode. So let's get things underway quick, smart, and have a look at how our yellow and red cards are looking. So 11 rounds we've had so far, and we've had 94 yellow cards. That's right, 94 yellow cards, which how many do we have in 2016? 94 over the whole competition. How absurd is that? Already, we have matched the tally of last season and only 11 rounds of 2017. We still have a third, roughly, of round robin play to go before we got finals and all that sort of stuff as well. So we are going to blitz 100. We're going to go sky high flying to all sorts of new records of ill discipline in 2017. That's what rugby has become these days. It's a bit soft, isn't it? It's just a little bit soft, and the referees are just, they're really confused. They're a lot confused. Let's not beat around the bush of that. They are completely bamboozled. And another stat, interesting enough, coming out of those card situation, is that not one referee has not given out a yellow card yet. Jamie Nut-Brown was the last referee to have not dished out a yellow. His record is now blemished. He's given one out, and he has now one to his name, which means all Super Rugby referees have now dished out a yellow card at least once, unlike the leaders here at the top, where there's some big dishes of yellow cards. We can have a look at the tally. It is Jaco Piper who has the big number, double figures of yellow cards. He has dished out 11, and amazingly, on the other side, it is Westerhuizen who has dished out 3 red cards. He's only done 7 yellows, so we say only, but still 10 cards in total, 3 of them reds. What an absolute monster he is as a referee. Watch him in future. If your team's got him on the referees list, you could be in a bit of strife. But let's take a look back at what we had in store for us last weekend. It was round 11 of Super Rugby, and it all kicked off in Wellington with the Hurricanes up against the Stormers. Then we're going to have a quick look back at these matches just briefly and to what I thought about these games. Now this was quite an interesting matchup as well. Hurricanes and the Stormers, they kind of went neck for neck for a bit there. The Stormers really showing what they can do, what they're capable of, but what we haven't seen from them on tour so far. They come to the party for a good portion of that matchup, fell away late on, but in the end the Hurricanes, well, they were far too good. A couple of little sloppy plays that the Stormers put in that they will really regret. That could have changed the tide of that match. It could have been really, really tight, but I mean, that Geordie Barrett try where he stripped the ball of Nazim Carr and planted it millimetres from the dead ball line. I mean, that is just freakish stuff. There's nothing else more you can describe it. And it's moments like that that changed this whole matchup. The Hurricanes eventually went on to win it by 19 points, 41-22. Kind of blew out quite a bit towards the end, but the Stormers, I think they had a good match. I think they can at least leave Wellington semi-happy with how they performed in that game. It was definitely better than we saw from them in previous weeks, especially against the Highlanders the week before, where they were completely outclassed. So a big win for the Hurricanes that got round 11 underway. Now, quite remarkably, it was 2 games in a row where the home team scored 41 points, and what we just talked about with the Hurricanes, they had a good win, a good margin as well, almost 20 points, almost double their opposition. Before the second game of the weekend, it was the Cheetahs who come up against the Highlanders. Now, anyone who remotely follows Super Rugby will know exactly what happened in this match, so I won't go on about it too much. But the Cheetahs, they scored 41. The Highlanders, oh, here's a big spoiler, scored 45. Now, you could look at that and say, yeah, the Cheetahs did really well. They pushed the Highlanders, but if you didn't watch that game, then you have no idea what the hell went on there whatsoever. The Cheetahs should have won it, could have won it, really had no other choice but to win it. But what they do, they defied all odds except the wrong way. They did everything they should have done, and they did it beautifully as well for pretty much 90% of this game, until right at the very end when something went completely pear-shaped for them. what it is with this Cheetahs team. They thought they had won it possibly, and they thought, yep, we've done enough. Let's just wind down the clock and coast to this nice victory over a New Zealand team. It was all there for them. It was all on a silver platter. They'd done the hard work, and they let it unravel in truly spectacular fashion as well against a team like the Highlanders, who have the firepower. But these Cheetahs, often underestimated. I didn't think they'd win it, but I didn't think they'd really push the Highlanders like they did. The Highlanders scored 3 tries in the last 8 minutes or so of this game, when it completely turned itself on its head. They eventually, as we just said, won it by 4 points, but they should have been nowhere near. The Cheetahs had that one sewn up very much before that, and they let themselves go big time and let a huge opportunity to take some massive points completely slip through their grasp. An unbelievable fixture. I do feel sorry for the Cheetahs, but I also say, well, if you can't play 80 minutes, you've got to be punished by better sides. And you've got to say for the Highlanders as well, they must be concerned about their first 60-70 minutes, where they really were not in that match by a well-performed, well-oiled machine that the Cheetahs were for that first 3 quarters of that game. 41-45, the Highlanders definitely used their get-out-of-jail-free card to escape from that one. So that was a big away win for the Highlanders as well. Next up, talking about away wins, the Lions on their tour of Australia, they're up against the Rebels. And this one, well, as you'd expect, wasn't much of a contest. The Rebels never really even threatened this game. The Lions, if not anything, looked much, much better than we've seen from them in their tour so far. They pretty much put the Rebels to the sword. They destroyed them, they sliced them, they diced them, they put them in a stew, and there was not much more about it at all. It was a comprehensive win, 37 points. There's not much more to say. 47-10. The Rebels, no fun for them at all. They were completely outplayed by an impressive looking Lions outfit, who continue to stroll through the meadows and clean up points every which way they go. They look really dangerous, and the more this competition goes on, the better the Lions look. But we'll talk more about them later on. Following that one, we went back to New Zealand, where the Chiefs are up against the Reds, and there's always a slimmer thought in the back of your mind that the Reds won't be able to do something here. You know, if they get the rub of the green a few times, have some interesting calls, which they seem to have developed a habit of getting either really bad ones or really good ones from some terrible refereeing decisions, they could be in for a chance. The Chiefs, they've looked rusty, they've looked inconsistent and just unable to put teams fully to the sword, but they're doing just enough to keep that winning streak nicely rolling along. It all changed in round 11 though for the Chiefs, as they absolutely destroyed the Reds at home, 46-17. There was only one team in that one, and it was great to see the Chiefs returning to a bit of that form that really puts teams away. Remember, the Chiefs have only lost one match still so far in the competition, and all the talk is about the upcoming game this weekend, Hurricanes, Crusaders. Don't forget about the Chiefs. They're a team that will punish you from deep if you give them a chance, and they are just lurking. A lot of people saying, and myself included, that they looked a bit dodgy, they didn't look their best, but just showed you in this weekend just gone, back at home, back to being dangerous. Stephen Donald, what a man this guy is. He just does not get any worse. He is just as good today as he was back when he won the World Cup 6 years ago. And you got to say, if not, his running game is a lot better than we've seen from him in his glory days in the international game. He was a massive impact for the Chiefs playing in that last match, which is just something so odd to say. The Chiefs look good. It doesn't matter who's there. It doesn't matter who's not there. There's too much quality at that Chiefs outfit to give away a loss, really. They just cannot stop winning, and they just have it mentally up there. They know how to win, and they got another one over the Reds. Next up, we went to Australia, where the worrying Waratahs were in action against the Blues. Now, this is another equation with the bottom place New Zealand side, the Blues, having more points than the whole Australian conference. And the Waratahs, well, they had a chance here to put something right for Australia. Maybe get the first Australian conference win over a New Zealand side this season. It was never going to happen, was it? the Blues, they played a good performance, not the full 80, they really let the Waratahs back into it towards the end, but they hung on by enough, and when things got desperate, they got desperate as well, and they hung on some good defence at the end, but if they just worked a little bit harder, a little bit sooner on their defence, it probably wouldn't have got that way. The Waratahs got pretty close, 33-40 is a lot closer than that match really played out to be. They had some impressive performances from the likes of the Ioannis especially, who have really come into some good form over the last few weeks. I think going to be key of this Blues team is to make a good fist of this season. It's amazing though that their season relatively could be over if they can't catch the Highlanders into 4th position. But they are doing so well overall when you look at the other groups. They're playing harder opposition than the New Zealand teams as well, yet they still are out of the mix. It's an amazing competition, and well, to be the best, you've got to beat the best, and you've got to beat them consistently a whole season long. Look at the Crusaders, that's what they've done. The Blues a little bit late to the party, but they are still a very good side in Super Rugby, and they're going to continue to quest on, I think, for a pretty good season, although the chances are they will miss out on the playoffs as it looks at the moment. More on the Blues though later on, as per always. We made our way over to South Africa with the Sharks. We're in action against the Force. Now the Sharks never really threatened here. The Force, they've got the passion, but they just don't have the ability, and they're on tour, and it was just a hard working game for them. The Sharks, always a dangerous team at home. They're looking to really solidify that 2nd position in their African Conference as well. They couldn't afford to slip up here against the Force, a team that is really just looking to play that spoiler already in this season. Now the Australian Conference as a whole is, pretty average. And you've got to say if a team can put away a couple of wins here from Australia against anyone, they could become a threat to that top of the table. Even the Force, who are a wee way down, but they're still within a chance, but the chances of them getting a couple of wins in a row, pretty remote. And the Sharks, they were professional enough as it was, and they have the top point scorer in the competition as well, so reliability on points, and they just have a professional outfit that just get the job done, and they look good up in 2nd in their African pool as well. Hard to put down. The Force never within a chance. Sharks winning that one out 37-12 over the Force. Now, still in South Africa, we're off to the Bulls versus the Crusaders. And, well, I'll tell you the score here because there was only one team with the Stampede, and it wasn't the Bulls, that's for sure. 62-24. Yeah, that's right. The Bulls at home. Loftus, what else could they have asked for to give themselves an advantage? They were absolutely walloped, smashed, burnt, destroyed, whatever word you want to use to describe it. That's what happened to the Bulls. They were dealt to pretty comprehensively as well by the Crusaders. 62-24. That is a painful result. Crusaders far too good. They continue on undefeated, and they look almost impossible to beat, and they have their biggest test of all coming this weekend. Now finally for round 11 was a big game here for the 2 new franchises of Super Rugby. The Jaguares versus the Sunwolves. The Sunwolves got home advantage when they first met and picked up a pretty big win too against a much more fancied Argentinian franchise. Today was a chance for revenge for the Jaguares, and they put it on pretty nicely as well. Only winning by 7 points, 46-39, but as we talked about in the preview last week, I thought that both teams are pretty keen to attack. They like to throw the ball around, they like to chance their arm, play attacking rugby. They're not going to ground it down. Even though the Jaguares have a very good pack, they still have developed a very good running back line as well. They can cut and weave and dive and score tries when they want to. It's 2 teams that really play attacking rugby that is nice and enjoyable to watch as well. I enjoyed this game. The Jaguares, they got out just enough against the Sunwolves, and really it's like the Sunwolves have this a bit of a grudge match here against the Jaguares to be, the better of the 2 new franchises. They now sit 1-1, having both beaten the other while at home, which is always that big difference maker, isn't it? The home crowd, big, especially for Japan and Argentina. That is massive. 46-39. The Jaguares got that win, and boy, that's a great round of rugby we've had too in round 11. A lot of interesting matches, big comebacks, almost upsets, and just great Super Rugby content. But the real question remains, could you pick it? Did you pick it? Not too many big upsetting results here this week. Almost a couple, but it should have been all plain sailing for everyone in the SuperBru League this week. How did your picks go? Let me know in the comments below, but we're going to have a recap, have a look at who is leading, and hopefully we might see some changes, because last time we looked, Caleb 42N was carving the tournament to pieces. Can anyone stop him? Let's take a look. Take a look now at the predictions leaderboard, and we can see that there is no changes on the top of the table. Caleb 42N is still smashing the top position. 101 points he has clicked over the triple figures, and he is leading by a good margin of almost 6 points, which is a lot in predictions leagues like these. Devon still sits second, though he's doing well, and unchanged at third is Waggers. We see a lot of movement inside the top 10. The Driving Mall special guest last week moving up another 4 positions into 7th. He's cracked the top 10 as well. A bad week for the Stig, who moves down 4 to 9th position. Other place movements, we see a big drop there for Grant Imahara, moving down 13 spots. That's a bad week there, down from quite a good position to a pretty poor one. Big movers and dancers throughout the teams. We've got a lot of people moving all around the shop, but it is Yellow Cap winner to Antipodal 49er, who has got a great week behind him, moving up 5 spots and seeing a lot of players move down below him, moving down 8, a 3 and a 12 for Timothy at the bottom. That is a big drop there for Timothy, down to 27th. As for my side, or my picks, you can see we have moved up 2 spots to 29th, and lovely to see the Scottish Cannon has dropped down 3. He keeps picking the Waratahs, and they keep letting him down. He's down to 30th, and that's his worst position so far. He has dropped below us, which is great. Brett Harley, he's down 33rd, although he did move up 3 spots as well, and it is Ian down in 35th with the wooden spoon for round 11. So a lot of movers and shakers this round, but it wasn't at the top. A lot of movement from there on down though, but the top 3 still the same. As for the Fantasy League, there's still no change at the top here either, with MFCFO's Blues sitting atop the table with 2,186 points, a tiny little lead over the Storming Rangers, and then it's the Transgender Sloths who moved down another spot, unfortunately for them, down to 3rd. It's a few usuals that we see in this sort of area of the leaderboard. The Solar Eclipses having another bad week, going down to 6th, and then it is Alnut 07 and the Super Steelers who have moved in 3 spots up. He claimed the Yellow Cap, which is a great week there for the Super Steelers as they make their way up the leaderboard. A few teams making a big drop. Caleb 42N, great week last week. This week, he's dropped down 4 spots as well. A lot of movers and shakers going through the middle of the table here. A lot of teams up 3, 4, or 5, like the All Flakes, who now move into 23rd in this round's competition. So the All Flakes doing well. We've moved up a lot of places. You can see all dropping below us. So a great week there for the All Flakes on the fantasy team. Do we have a wooden spoon or anywhere? We've got the Cannons down here in 36th. So another bad week sees them drop down another 4 spots, and the wooden spoon is down at the bottom. Do they even try? It's the notable Wales. Did they even put any picks in? Do they even have a team? 0 points. Probably not with a prediction or with a squad number like that, or a points number like that. Terrible week there, but still, it is a very interesting table this. A lot of interesting teams at the top, and you can say, 100 points isn't the most you have to get back. A random player picking up a lot of points for one-off game could be a difference maker. It is still wide open, although the Blues firmly at the top. Okay, let's take a look at what round 12 has to offer here. We've got some big games coming up, 7 matches this weekend, so 4 teams on the bye. Let's take a look. So as I mentioned, 4 teams having a bye, and those 4 teams are the Chiefs, the Stormers, the Sunwolves, and the Waratahs. So that's hence why we haven't got the Cannon on this weekend, because we didn't want to talk about the Waratahs when they're not even featured in this weekend's round of matches. So it all kicks off on Friday night, as per always, with the Blues versus the Cheetahs. And this is a match where both teams have had their playoffs hopes pretty much gone and dashed. The Blues have that slender little bit of a chance if they can get a few wins stringing together, and the Highlanders do slip up. There's always that possibility that the Blues can get up. They are sitting currently 6 points behind, so a couple of weeks in a row where they could put in a good show could change things for the Blues, who will still harbour those hopes of picking up that 4th spot in New Zealand. Seeing as the Australian sides are so poor, there's no threat of a second place Australian team forcing their way into the playoff spot, all the wildcard spots come the end of the season. I think the Blues found it quite a bit easier to score last weekend. They were up against the Waratahs, and we all know that the Waratahs aren't much of a defensive side. They've been pretty poor when it comes to that sort of side of the game, and they played pretty well, although they couldn't complete the full 80 minutes, the Blues, and they did let them come back in quite heavily, as we talked about before, in those last 10, 15 or so minutes of that game, which they will not be happy about. The most pleasing thing for the Blues here will be the form of the likes of the Ioane brothers, who are really coming along very well and are becoming a key thing. It's all about the brothers at the moment, isn't it? It's the Barretts, it's the Ioanes, it's players like that, key men doing key jobs, and they are really the names of New Zealand rugby at the moment from these couple of franchises. But if anything from the Blues, with the Cheetahs coming from South Africa, of course, no real South African team likes to travel apart from possibly the Lions. They'll want to play a full, complete 80-minute performance here more than anything. They won't want to get off to a big lead like they did against the Waratahs and then see that dwindle and just have enough to hang on. They'll want to do it throughout the full 80. The Cheetahs are a good side again, and we know that they can offer a lot. As we've seen last weekend against the Highlanders, against New Zealand team, the Blues would have been egging them on to win that one, but we've seen that they can score a lot of points, they can construct a lead, but just like the Blues, two very similar teams here going head to head. What is the last 80 minutes going to tell us, or the last 20 minutes of the 80 going to tell us this week, with two teams who over the last recent time haven't really shown us a full 80-minute display? And it was pleasing as well, because I think the Cheetahs offered a lot more than most people expected against especially the Highlanders, who were travelling pretty well, but it's always that travel factor. And it is also reversed this week. Instead of the Cheetahs being at home, having the travelling team come to them, now they're on the road, and they're going to Eden Park, the Blues. Of course, one of the toughest places to go to. So that is really going to be a big call here for the Cheetahs, if they can find some form. Both sides last week, like I said, found it easy to score tries. This week, again, it could be similar, with both teams wanting to put points on the board, throw the ball around. It is Super Rugby, and that's what it's known for. Defence could find itself a bit on the outer for the second week, or if not the 100th week in a row, for a team like the Blues, who predominantly like to attack for sure. The Cheetahs, they're desperate, they've got a lot to prove, but I think the travel, everything counts up against them. The Blues back at home, and they will be really gutted that they let things slip, as will the Cheetahs. It could be a good matchup here if the Cheetahs can adapt to the travel. That's going to be the big thing, and I think they will to a certain degree, but not enough to win this game, and hence why I'm going with the Blues to win this one, but I think it's going to be pretty close. I'm going to the Blues by just 6, because the Cheetahs, they're better than we thought, they're better than we expected, they've surprised a lot of people, and you just can't write a team off that has had such a good last 12 months or so. So they've got to be up there. They performed well last weekend, and I expect to see more of the same from them and give the Blues a good run for their money to kick off round 12. Now, speaking of well-travelled South African sides, we have our second match of the weekend, and it is the Brumbies at home up against the Lions. Now, well, the Lions have had a great tour so far. They got a bit slowly into their work, didn't they, when they first kicked off their tour in their first match-up, but they've come along nicely since then, and that emphatic display against the Rebels last weekend really showed what the Lions could do. But the Brumbies, the home team, coming back from the bye, and they have a lot to play for. The Australian Conference really is on the brink here, and it really is up for grabs as well. When you look at the table, you see the Brumbies sit on 18 points, the Waratahs on just 14 points. One game can change that leaderboard. They're performing so poorly. A win is such a massive difference maker. They've only got 3 wins from 9 or 10 matches. That is the best Australia has had to offer this season. I mean, the Waratahs on the bye this week, which is gonna help the Brumbies, I should say, to focus more on what they've got to do here. They shouldn't be worried about what the Waratahs are going to do, because they're not in action. They need to get here, get this game underway, and they need to look for a win, because there's a lot on the line here. If they can pick up a win against the Lions, not only will be a huge win, but it'll also give them a bigger buffer. If they can go to an 8-point buffer over the Waratahs when they return from the bye, that would be massive. Luckily for the Brumbies, the Waratahs couldn't pull off an upset while they were on the bye, so now it's a chance for the Brumbies to do the same. We know how they play. Forward dominated, they like to maul, they like to control the speed and slow it all down for themselves, so we can expect them to try and do that, but against a very, very good Lions pack, a very good touring Lions team, and an exciting backline that has that ability to cut and weave and dive. Like Scosan are in fantastic form this year already. He is really carving it up. Mapu's been decent already as well this season, and there's a lot of players who can really rip this game to shreds for the Lions. They are really doing it easy, not only in Australia, but they're doing it easy in the Africa 2 conference as well. I don't think the Australian teams anywhere will step up to what the Lions can offer unless they have a real shocker of a match and they allow the Brumbies to control and dictate the tempo and the style of this game. If they can draw the Lions in, which I don't think they will, they could have a chance. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty easy runaway here for the Lions. Last time the Lions lost was in round 3. Round 3 went out to round 12. That is 9 games, or 9 rounds I should say, that the Lions have not lost in, which is a superb effort that's going to continue on here today. This will be the toughest task in Australia, but I don't even think the Brumbies will touch them. I think once the game warms up, players start to get into their groove, into the whole routine of how the game's going to play out, that says the Brumbies will lose their control of the match, because they won't be able to go structurally as they like. The Lions will start to control it, and they should take it away, I think, quite comprehensively. I've got the Lions by 22 points over the Brumbies, a big score to get one over the Aussie Conference leaders from the Lions, who are going to just calm their way through. Already got a 10-point lead in Africa 2 over the Sharks, who should be picking up another win this weekend as well. But 9 wins, 1 loss. You can't argue with how the Lions have performed this season. Next match of the weekend, and this is the big one. This is the massive one. This is a huge, ginormous, massive, massive game. It's the Crusaders up against the Hurricanes. Now, this is surely going to be matchup of the weekend. I've even read things saying this is matchup of the season, matchup of Super Rugby, the biggest round-robin game played in Super Rugby history. They could be taking things a little bit too far, but despite all those, it is still a massive, massive game. And when you look at the table, it's a bit strange to look at this game and think, if you didn't follow Super Rugby too closely, you'd say, what's so big about this game? Crusaders undefeated, 46 points. They're coasting at the moment. You'd say the Chiefs are probably their most likely rivals on 42. At least they'll pass them if they can beat them and pick up the bonus point. Now, the Hurricanes, on the other hand, are only on 38 points. They, of course, have a game in hand, which always makes a difference, but a win here for the Canes won't see them pass the Crusaders. So you could say, to an effect, that will it even have that big of a bearing on the whole conference overall? It depends on future matches. The Canes, they could win this one, but they've got to keep winning, and that is the biggest thing for this competition in New Zealand. It's the easiest, the game of the round, undefeated, just back from Africa as well, the Crusaders, and some massive displays in Africa as well. They just have such a rock-hard spine. They are so hard to break down. They have massive depth as well. It doesn't matter who gets injured. They seem to be able to pull out another player who can step up to that level of Super Rugby. We've seen it for years, but this time they seem to have got the core of the group right, and just players come in and bang, they hit the level. No read, no problem. No wingers, no Digby Ioane. Who the hell is Digby Ioane? He's hardly featured. We've got this man, Bridge, and Bridge is cleaning up. He's one of the best try scorers of the tournament so far, which is just testament to what I've been saying. The depth is ridiculous. No problems at all. Someone's out, someone steps up. They look unbreakable, the Crusaders. They don't do the unbelievable. They don't do the fantastic. they just win, and they win well, they win with lots of points, and they're just such a different entity to what we see from the likes of the Hurricanes. You can even look at the table and you can see that it is just 5 points difference between the two teams' attack. One's on 405 points for the other's 410. You'd think that the Hurricanes, the way they play, so expansive, so exciting, they would be the top point scoring team in the New Zealand Conference, which they are, but not by as much as you'd thought. But the other way goes too. The Crusaders have only 195 points against them, which I would have thought the Crusaders would have been the best defensive side in New Zealand, but no, they're not. Amazingly, the Hurricanes are, with 170 points against them. So they've got a 15-point difference there on defence as well. So there's a lot of things in the style of play you would expect. With the Hurricanes, they seem to just have that little edge in the two areas, despite the Crusaders seeming to be the unbeatable side of Super Rugby. I think the biggest thing we're going to learn about this match is which team has a weakness, or where is either side's weakness. I think a lot of teams are going to watch this game. They have future matches against either of these sides, which is pretty much most of the teams. They'll be watching that, especially New Zealand sides, and saying, where do they gain an edge? Where will the Canes or the Crusaders get an edge over the other? That is going to be so important, so crucial to this game and the future as well. No one seems to have really found a way to break down the Crusaders, so that is going to be by far the biggest thing that we could learn from this matchup. We know the Canes, they like to play that highlight reel rugby, and I expect to see much more of the same from them as well. They've named a very, very good side, and I expect them to perform very, very well. It's a hard one to pick. I've seen a lot of you out there in Twitter and in comments in there saying, who do you pick for this one? Who do you go for? I expect it to be very split, 50-50 almost between the two sides. My pick though, I'm going with the Crusaders by 2 points. Just 2 points. I think this is going to be a stunning matchup. I think mistakes could lead to opportunity, and that's probably all the two teams are going to get from each other. I really hope they bring their A game, and I really hope it is a cracker. Either team could win this one quite easily or quite difficultly. It's going to come down to one big play or one big mistake that will ultimately decide this game. The likes of cards, things like that, is going to be interesting. And for me, the difference, just 2. I'm interested to see who everyone thinks is going to win this matchup. That's going to be big as well. Bonus points. Can someone pick up a bonus point from this one? I highly doubt we're going to see 3 try difference between these two teams, but it's going to be a cracker, and I cannot wait for that matchup. Next up, after we have that amazing game that will hopefully be between the Crusaders and the Hurricanes, we go over to Australia with the Rebels and the Reds. Wow, what do we say about this? Nothing on the line here for the Rebels. They're bottom of the table, 1 win, 1 draw, just 7 points to their name, which when you look at it, they're only halfway to getting up to second place with the Waratahs. So when you only got 5 points is huge. Big chance for them against the Reds. They seem to perform better in the derby matches, but they have really been the whipping boys of Super Rugby this year. Their points differential is minus 238. That is by far the worst points differential in Super Rugby this year. Minus 238. What's really killed them here is their lack of attack. Now you see the Sunwolves have conceded 419 points to the Rebels just 354, but the Sunwolves have pretty much scored twice as many points as the Rebels. That's where they're losing out. They're not so bad defensively as other sides. Even the Cheetahs have conceded more points than the Rebels, but the Cheetahs have scored a lot more themselves. So that is a big difference maker. The Rebels need to score points, need to learn how to score points, and they need to just encourage that ability to make something happen out of mistakes. That is the only way they're going to get anywhere. They still have that element where they can have the ability to win. We've seen it only a couple of weeks ago against the Sharks, but can they do that again? It was only a draw, but that was a great result for them, but they need to step up against the Reds, a team that can run pretty hot and cold, but have been decent enough over the last few weeks. I expect the Reds will do enough for this one as well. They still do have that slimmer hope, the Reds, of reaching the playoffs. They sit on 11 points, and that is only 7 points adrift of the Brumbies. And a win here for the Reds, which you'd expect them to get, will put them above the Waratahs in second, which is massive as well. That's if they can grab the win, will put them on 15. A bonus point will put them on 16. So the possibilities here, they could be right on the tail of the Brumbies heading back into the next round. So the Reds have a chance as well to do something quite special. We talked about how bad the Rebels' defence is, but we also look at the Reds and say there's not too much happening there in their defence either. They've conceded 326, which is only just about, 28 points less than the Rebels, but again, difference being that the Reds have scored almost twice as many points as the Rebels as well. So defensively, both teams very, very poor. We could see some tries. Maybe the Rebels could pick up some points to add to their tally as well. But in the end, I don't think they're going to be good enough. Provided the Reds can stay at full strength here, keep these key men likes of the Higginbothams and Quade Cooper, who seems to have still had a little bit of an impact on how this team is performing, they could really do something special here. I'm expecting them to do it here over the Rebels, but I think it's going to be close. The fact that neither side can defend, I think the Rebels might actually find a little bit of attacking flair in this one, I do hope, and we could have an exciting match. I'm going the Reds by just 4 points over the Rebels. It should be an interesting game. It'll probably be pretty bad to watch, but there could be some fancy little tries and some little pieces of magic, like I like to call them, from the Reds possibly, and I'd say some individual brilliances from some key players that the Rebels actually do have. There's not many, but there is a couple that can do something, and we may see an interesting finish here to the Australian Conference, because we'll have 3 teams fighting for that top spot in Australia going into the last few rounds of the competition. Even the Force, they've gone 9 points. They're still a chance if they can pick up a win consecutively, a couple wins in a row, will change everything. But the chances of that, unlikely, especially with the Force. So the Highlanders continue their Africa tour, and they're off to see the Bulls next, a team who don't really have much to play for either, considering they are second in their conference, but there is only one playoff spot to play for, or wildcard spot for the African teams to play for here. So when you look at where the Sharks are and where the Bulls are, they actually have more chance of upsetting the Stormers and stealing the conference win spot than they do actually pulling off a wildcard spot, with first, second sitting above the Stormers in Africa 1. There they sit in Africa 2, which is quite crazy. The Lions and the Sharks doing it quite easily, securing those spots for the playoffs coming later on in the season. So no chance here for the Bulls. They're playing just for pride. And with the Stormers having the bye this week as well, they get to catch up a game. A win here for them. 5 points, you can add that to the bank. On the off chance that they do get them, we'll see them on 19. Still 7 points behind the Stormers though, which just seems like there's no chance in hell that the Bulls are going to recover that many points. Interestingly enough though, the Cheetahs, that's who the Highlanders played last weekend, do sit below the Bulls, and those two are having a real tussle for that second spot in Africa 1. If they can pick up a win next Cheetahs, they could actually go above the Bulls. So the Bulls will not want to let that happen. The Bulls want to stay second. Although they may miss out on the wildcard spot, they will want to finish second at very least, which will be their minimum goal coming off this season. They're just coming off a bye, then they got slaughtered by the Crusaders. I think morale might be a bit low. That was a big loss that they took from the Crusaders last weekend as well. Loftus is a fortress of a ground to play at, but the Bulls haven't protected it well this season, or in recent seasons either. It's not becoming the fortress that it used to be. It used to be a really tough place to go, but the Bulls, they need to pick that back up. Like they all say in sport, it's one of those old sporting cliches. You've got to protect your home. Your home has to be the last place a team wants to go to play. That's what the Bulls need to recover. They've got a great stadium, and they need to make it a graveyard for visiting sides. The Highlanders, on the other hand, they use their get-out-of-jail-free card, like I mentioned before. To get that win over the Cheetahs would have been one of the biggest upsets, maybe not of the season, but a pretty big one as well. Of that round, definitely. Not many people thought the Cheetahs were even going to get close in that game, but they did themselves proud. The Highlanders, though, they just showed that once they adapt to the game, once they get into their groove, and once they start to get that confidence, They can really score tries from anywhere and as quickly as they like. Those last few minutes, I think it was only 4.5 minutes in the end that they actually took to score those tries, really just showed how good this Highlanders team can be. But what they need to think about, and like we've spoken about week after week with different sides, is that 70 minutes before or 75 minutes before or you know, whatever it was, that they weren't that good and that they were quite comprehensively outplayed by the Cheetahs, who really deserved to win this game. Take away as much as you want, the Cheetahs were pretty good in this matchup as well. They need to compete a bit more than that. They should have never been in that situation, the Highlanders, but that's where you've got to credit the Cheetahs at home, and they made it really a tough place to go, and that's what the Bulls will need to do this weekend. They need that home support, and they need to get in, and they need to disrupt, upset, and again put the Highlanders in situations they don't want to be in, and not let them escape because they can score points. Well, it is really for fun. Mentally, they've got to step up now, the Highlanders, for the full 80. They've got to be wary of the Blues behind them on the table as well, like we spoke of before. Only 6 points behind. If they don't pick up points here against the Bulls, and the Blues do, they could really put that last wildcard spot in a lot of turmoil in the end of the season. But I've got the Highlanders to pull this one off. 12 points I've got them getting the win over the Bulls. I don't think they'll have the attacking ability to get over the Highlanders. They've got the threats everywhere out wide, ability to score from any which way they like. They just need to get a bit more onto it for the full match, and they should do it quite comprehensively against the Bulls. Right, next match of the weekend is the Kings back from the bye, and they're up against the Sharks, who have one hand on that wild card spot in Africa 2. They are trailing, like we've talked about already, by 10 points behind the Lions, but when you look at the table, they're only 8 points ahead of their next biggest threat behind them that could take that wildcard spot away from them. It's the Warriors, who are just 8 points behind, so they've got to be mindful of that. But the Kings, what a revelation these Kings have been. I really love what the Kings have done this season as well. They've been the real middle finger to Sansar this year. I've spoken about that before as well, but they've shown that if they could just sort out the upper things of that club, the players are definitely there, the talent is definitely there, and you can see, looking throughout all the other South African rugby franchises, that there's plenty of Kings players from seasons gone by that if they could have retained and kept players there, they could have become a decent damn team. You look at all this youthful players coming through, the talent that is there is insane. This team just needs sorted at the top, and then they can retain players, they can pay players, they can build, and they can continue to process and become something decent. We all know, we've talked about it. Look at the Lions, look at what the Cheetahs are doing. The Kings can be the same. The ability, the talent is definitely there. Amazing stat about the Kings, they would still be second in Australia if they were in the Australian pool. Isn't that bizarre? Isn't that really bizarre? Everyone boots on the Kings, but they'll be second in Australia. You look at them on the table, they got 3 wins. The Brumbies have only 3 wins, and they will qualify for the finals based on that. Why no hate on Australia? Why the hate to the Kings? I am really pleased with what the Kings have done this year. They've done better than the Cheetahs, better than the Sunwolves, better than all of Australia, and yet they are the team that is fully and firmly getting the swift kick up the arse when they're not their whooping boys. And these guys have been together for just this season. They've had no build-up, they've had no development. I've gone from one side of this ledger to the complete other with the Kings. I think that they have certainly shown themselves to be a decent little club this year. And I'm really, it's sort of a proud sort of thing you can get with the Kings, because they had a lot of pressure on them. They had a lot of pressure to actually do something, and a lot of expectation that they were going to be shit from not only media, fans, everyone thought that the Kings were rubbish and really ripped them off straight away. Myself included, hands up, no question about that. I really put the boot into the Kings, but I have been so impressed with how they have turned things around. They haven't lost, get this, by over 13 points since round 5. Well, that was to the Lions, which, let's be fair, not many sides haven't been beaten by 13 points by the Lions. That means that from round 5 or 6 to 11, the Kings have either won or they've lost by less than 13 points. Is that bad? That's not bad. That's just about a bonus point, a losing bonus point when they've lost, and a winning points for winning. That's not bad. You can't criticise the form of the Southern Kings. They've got no pressure on them now. The expectation is done. They've far exceeded expectation. And I just hope that they continue on this vein of free-flowing rugby and really just continue to spit in the face of those who hate on the Kings, especially the likes of Sansa. And it's just going to get better and better for the Kings for the rest of the season. They are up against the Sharks, so we cannot forget the Sharks, what they've accomplished. 7 wins, only 2 losses this year in the draw, of course. They're already sitting there with one fin firmly on that wildcard spot, so they could go a long way picking up a win here against the Kings, who are in their pool or in their conference as well. So a win here will be great for the Sharks. They'll go further on to pushing them away from the Jaguares, and another fin will go on that wildcard spot. I do find it kind of surprising that the Sharks have only lost twice, and their points differential was very good as well. So their defence, only 204 points conceded, which would take out the New Zealand Conference, and that is just about the best in the competition. There is only the likes of the Brumbies who have a better defence than the Sharks, which is bizarre, an Australian team having good defence. But the Sharks, they know how to get victories. And an unpredictable Kings could create chances against them. We know how much these X-Factor guys out in the outside backs have got for the Kings. The Sharks are going to have their best defence on, and they're going to have to continue on this building up of scoring points. We've seen Sharon Bosch, who is the top point scorer in Super Rugby this season. He needs to be on song here for the Sharks. They can't afford to underestimate the Kings here. No one can afford to do that for the rest of the season. They do, it'll be at their peril, and the Kings, they'll have a chance to do something, and they could well upset the Sharks. That is always a possibility, and you've got to look at it from the other perspective here. We talk about how good the Kings would be if they were in Australia, but how about this? The Kings would be second if they were in Africa 1. How bizarre is that? The Kings actually have a tougher pool. They got the Lions, the Sharks, and the Jaguares, who would all just about be topping Africa 1. The Jaguares are 2 points behind the Stormers. But the other things, if the Kings and the Cheetahs swap places, the Kings would be doing even better. This is how bizarre this whole thing is about putting the boot into the Kings. They're actually not performing that badly. On the overall table, as much as I hate the overall table because it means nothing, but it gives you a gauge of, who's performing where. They're actually sitting right in the middle, which really, how can you fault that at all? The Kings are sitting there above the Bulls, above the Waratahs, the Cheetahs, the Reds, the Force, the Rebels, and the Sunwolves. That's not bad. That is not bad from the Kings. They're having a good year, and I'm really, really happy for the Kings. They are the turnaround team of 2017. My margin for this, I've gone with the Sharks by 9, almost forget to mention it. Sharks to pip it. I think the Kings, I really hope they have another good bamboozling game against the Sharks. Right, 1 game to go. Jaguares versus the Force. Now, the Jaguares of 2017, I think they've been groundbreaking. They've really changed their performances. They've got good wins. They're sitting on a 5-win, 5-loss record at the moment, which they'll want to expect to, I should say, be above 50% come the close of the season. That loss to the Sharks a couple of weeks ago has really killed off, though, their wildcard spot hopes. They sit on 24 points, and we've spoken about this already, only 8 points behind the Sharks. So still a couple of things going their way and a couple of wins going on their bank account. Could be good, but they'll be pleased. So they got that revenge against the Sunwolves, and they'll want to continue to kick on at home as well, which they're at home. Force travelling to Argentina, which is no easy place to go to. We've spoken about that too, making your home a fortress. That's what the Bulls need to do, especially with the Jaguares. They don't need to do it because they've done it. It's a tough place to go, and I think they've only lost once there this season as well, which is key to how their season's gone. They've been poor on the road, but their season's still not been that bad because they've performed at home, which is a big thing to play for. They can't lose a match now, the Jaguars. I think they've got to keep pushing on, keep scoring points, and keep that win percentage over the 50% mark. That is key for them for a successful season. And then they can build on that. Next year, they can do even better as well, which is what they have to continue to build. Get better, improve, and become a wildcard or playoff team in the future. That is all the Jaguars need to look out for. Amazingly, we give them credit for not conceding yellow cards, but they still are the leading yellow card conceded team as well in the competition. But you can see most of it is in the first half of the competition, which is good that they've cleaned that up, and the results are fully telling of how they're playing as well. 15 men on the field is one of the most important things to have in a game of rugby. Bizarre, isn't it? Now the Force, they're on their way home from Durban. And it was a Durban hiding that they took to the hands of the Sharks. It was a big one, 37-12. It's a hard one to come back home to. Stopping off in Argentina on the way isn't the best thing to do. They're playing for the pride of the jersey. The Force, there's not much in it. We spoke about the Force before. They're on 9 points. A win against the Jaguars would be great. They could, at best, they could go into second position if they can get 5 points from this win. If they bonus point over the Jaguars, they could be second in Australia. That's just how Australia is at the moment. They're doing so badly. One win can completely turn this table upside down. So the Force is still there, but they need to pretty much string their whole season of wins together, which is only 2, to have any threat in the postseason. But you know, that's what I'm saying. The Reds and the Force get a win here. That could completely change the whole landscape of Australia's conference. So there's always that glimmer of hope there for the Force. The advantages that they normally have, the Force, a home crowd, the surprise, you know, just beating teams to the punch, that banana skin sort of underestimating thing. They don't have much of that going for them. The Jaguars seem to be a team pretty focused this year, and I'd expect them to not give anyone an inch whatsoever, especially a team like the Force. They learned the hard way against the Sunwolves last year. They've rectified that again this year, and they could certainly do it here against the Force. I think that the Force don't have much of their strengths going for them here to really pop up and give something here to the Jaguars. Interesting stat here coming out of this match though is that the Western Force actually have the second best defence. Yeah, that's right, the second best defence in Australia, but they are up against the third best attack in both South African divisions. The Jaguars have scored a boatload of points, and only the Lions and the Stormers have scored more than the Jaguars. So there's always that possibility of a good defence versus a good attack, but I fully expect the Jaguars to do it at home with that crowd support behind them, and that better attack should be a bit overwhelming for the poor old Force, who have showed glimpses of what they can do, but I don't think they're going to be enough in Buenos Aires against the Jaguars. I'm going Jaguars by 16. Should be a good game though. The travelling side have the story to tell. The Jaguars at home, it's theirs to lose, and they could go nicely up. You know, another few points, look towards 30, put pressure on the Sharks. There's still that hope for them as well. But it's getting to that time of the season where that's what it's all about. It's looking toward those wildcard spots, the conference leader spots. So that's what the two teams, all the teams I should say, will be looking towards the state of the season. But that is it for round 12 of Super Rugby. This week a little late. I've had a lot of corrupted data of my recording, so this was supposed to be out Wednesday night. Problems, more problems, but we're getting it out there before the weekend starts. So thank you for tuning in and watching. Guess we'll be back again. We'll have a lot earlier in the week, barring no problems coming through once again. It seems to always be this series, since it's time-based, that I always have issues with hard drives dying, Windows getting errors on updates and having to reformat, corrupt video files, corrupt audio files from earlier in the season as well. I've had it all this year, but we've still got the videos out, so I hope you guys all get to catch this before the games start, hopefully at least before the Saturday games as well, the core of the matches. But don't forget to get your SuperBru picks in, and I'll see you all this weekend on Twitter at CornflakesCrib. Always good banter going on around the Twitter sphere, and I'll see you all around for Super Rugby action. Until then, thank you for watching. Double take care. I'll see you next time.